Okay, so starting this topic with a bit of a disclaimer attached to it. Mystery Babylon is an extremely complex topic, and to really fully do it justice is hundreds of hours worth of information. But what I'm doing for you today is just pulling some threads and showing you how they link together. And I'm going to do this with a very humble heart. I'm not going to tell you any of this is necessarily 100% fact. Instead, I just want to present you with things that I've discovered as I've looked at this topic that are sort of standout parts to Mystery Babylon, and a little bit of a deeper dive into all of her harlots as well, because Mystery Babylon has many harlots, and you're going to get to see just how much she has infected the world with her false religion, a religion that elevates other gods and specifically elevates Lucifer himself, who she aims to bring into the world very soon, I'm sure. So starting with the screen that you see here, there's already quite a lot of information there to look at. Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. And then in the image, this is actually quite a detailed image of what she sits on and what she surrounds herself with, and obviously the cup that she holds. And we learn from Revelation that that cup is filled with all the abominations of the earth and the blood of the saints, and that the world partakes in this abomination, and that her ultimate demise is that she will receive a double portion of her own cup. So first, I think the most important thing to do is establish who Mystery Babylon is from the past, because we already have a clue right there in the title that she is from Babylon. And as we work our way through this little presentation, you'll get to see just how much she's infiltrated all the religions of the world, and a lot of the other systems of the world that we rely upon today. That includes the medical system, the financial system, and the governments of the world. So she's seated here in this image on a beast, and the beast, we know from Revelation, is going to devour her. It's going to rebel against her. It actually hates her. It doesn't want to be controlled by her. And at the moment, she's restraining this beast. But as we're starting to see in our societies today, especially in the Western world, there's a movement happening of people that have had enough of all of these agendas that are coming in, and of all of these decisions that are being made by our legal systems and our schooling systems and our medical systems that are no longer acceptable to the general public. And we're going to find out why as we move through this study. If you look in the background behind the beast, you'll see all of the peoples of the world, and they're bathing in this blood. Behind her, you'll see some well-dressed men. I would suggest to you these are the merchants of the world and the rulers of the world who have been busy actually sharing in her cup, and that's why they're all holding their own cups filled with that same blood that she's responsible for. Interesting, in the actual image as well, you'll see that she's adorned in lots of fine jewelry and gold and fine stones, and there's a lot more obviously to why she's adorned that way. She is presenting herself as a priestess, maybe as a high priestess to the world, and that also is going to become more apparent as we move through. So moving on. So Revelation 17:3-5 is where we're going to sort of get the first little bit of information about what it is that's being revealed here. And it says, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth." So within that, there's quite a lot of information, and as we move through now, you're going to see how we slowly unpack that. And I'm going to move to the origins of Babylon. So in Genesis 10:8-12, we read, "And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city." So what we see here is the origins of Babylon, and we know that it started with this man named Nimrod, who is of the bloodline of Ham, and he came from Canaan. And Nimrod has a very nefarious story attached to him that says he's a great hunter before the Lord. And there's a lot more to look at with Nimrod, what that actually means to be a great hunter, and what he actually did to become considered a great hunter. There is a understanding that when we look at his genetics, he may have been much larger than a normal human. And how he came to be so large is actually fairly thoroughly debated now over the years. Some people believe it was genetic manipulation. Some people believe it came from the bloodlines of the Nephilim, the giants of old, from the story of Genesis 6, when angels known as the Watchers came down and took women for themselves and did something they should not have done. This has led to a corrupted bloodline that when the Israelites entered the land, they were very busy having to deal with, because the promised land was filled with the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and many other bloodlines that God was not happy with and actually wanted, in some cases, completely eradicated. Not even the animals were to remain. And so if we understand that there is a bloodline there that Nimrod potentially came from, or maybe even through genetic manipulation reintroduced to the world after the flood, we can understand that there was some more nefarious things going on than just the building of a tower. And the building of the tower, if we can imagine the size of this tower, it was very great. And it was so great indeed that the whole world had gotten involved in it. And we don't know much when we're looking at the 66-book canon. I'm only going to stick to that today because that is a whole other topic, and I don't want to delve into that without having deeper discussions with people on that topic first. So we're just going to stick to the 66-book canon, and we're going to very much focus on what we can gain or glean from those writings within it, specifically regarding this man, why he is the origin of Mystery Babylon, what the Tower of Babel represents, and what this religion was that he authored at that time. So moving on to the next slide. So in Genesis 11, 1-7, we read, "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." A plain, obviously, is a very large, flat area, an area that would be very suitable for building a very super large structure as they're intended to. "And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men had built. And Yahweh said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do." And I've highlighted this because of what it actually means. "And now nothing will be restrained from them." That's a very big statement. "Which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So Yahweh was that displeased with this building of this tower that he decided it was time to put an end to it. And the best way to do that was to confuse their languages and then to ultimately spread them out into the world so that they could no longer cooperate in the construction of this megalith, this super tower that they intended to breach heaven with. Now, that's a fascinating thought. And just looking at how they intended to do that, once again, we have limited information here, but I would suggest it's more than just the building of the tower. I would suggest to you potentially this is some form of temple, and that there may have been some form of religion practiced there, which we're going to look at shortly. And through this process, this is where I would then suggest to you, we may find that nothing that they had actually decided in their hearts to do would be restrained from them, because they were starting to touch on things of the spiritual realm, and maybe to a degree that we to this stage have never seen before, but are potentially starting to see again now. There are things that they were willing to do, that they had emboldened themselves to do, that is extremely sinful. And when you set yourself up that you want to become as God, and you start to develop for yourself a religion specifically to love and worship yourself, which I would suggest we will come to understand is the Luciferian religion. It is also known as Thelema. It brings with it a very heavy price, and God eventually intervenes, and that's exactly what happened here. So after Nimrod passed away, there was a very interesting trinity that was formed. It's the first time where we really get to see this trinity, or this triune structure of three people that claim to be one God. And so I'll just read this out quickly. After Nimrod's death, Semiramis became pregnant and had a son. She named him Tammuz. She explained the pregnancy by saying that Nimrod had ascended to the sun, and that she had conceived by a sunbeam sent by him into her womb. She claimed her son was Nimrod's reincarnation, or Nimrod reincarnate. And if you look at this little picture here that was drawn, it sort of points out a few interesting things there that the little bit of text doesn't say. One is that their claim is that he was born on December the 25th. I think we all know that that is Christmas. And the sun god, with his life-giving ray, impregnated her, which is interesting when we understand who the sun god is and the origins of the sun god, who the Luciferians worship, is the bringer of light. And Semiramis here represents herself as the moon goddess of ancient Babylon. And she's depicted there with a moon on her head. She represents herself as the wife and mother of Nimrod, because she claims that the child that was born was miraculous. And if you look in the hand of the little angel boy, Tammuz, these little angel wings, maybe suggesting that he's a half angel, half human, maybe of similar Nephilim origin, I would suggest to you. You can see he's holding something there. It has two snakes wrapped around it. This is called the Medusa. This is a staff that originates from that same religion. And if you look above, between the two hands of Nimrod and Semiramis, you will see the Baphomet star, the five-pointed star, which also suggests something very interesting. The star itself we're going to look at in more detail shortly. But really here we get to sort of see the introduction of this Luciferian religion for the very first time in this unholy trinity that has been presented in many different forms and shapes as time has gone on, and through many different religions, which I would suggest are the harlots of this mystery Babylon religion. So here we see some of the harlots. We see the origins of Babylon at the top. We see the sun god. The sun god represents himself in Babylon as Nimrod. The moon god, as we said, was Semiramis, and the reborn sun is Tammuz. In the Egyptian hierarchy or religion, they would have Ra as the sun god. They would have Isis as the moon god and Horus as the reborn sun. And then you can see as we look down, we have the Greeks with Zeus, Artemis, and Adonis, the Romans with Jupiter, Diana, and Apollo, the Nordics with Odin, Joro, and Thor, the Hindus with Vishnu, Chandra, and Krishna. This one catches people by surprise normally because Christians don't really get it. They have not really looked deep enough into their own origins of their religion to understand that there's been a unholy trinity established there through the Roman Catholic Church with who they call God, Virgin Mary, and Jesus. This is not, when I'm talking about this Jesus and this Virgin Mary, this is not the Virgin Mary and Jesus that we know. This is not the actual understanding of who they really are, but the twisted version that was brought into religion through deception and is still to this very day worshipped. And this is why we hear of Mary being the mother of God, and that she is actually in heaven, and that she can be used as an intercessor, and that she should be prayed to with the Hail Marys and the beads and all of this stuff. It actually all originates not from Christianity at all, but through a much older religion, a much more sinister religion, and a very insidious religion that has got its tentacles and its hooks into every other religion on this earth, and has done so very subtly and with a lot of time on its hands. And if you think of just how cunning the devil is and how much time he knows he's had a lot of time to work his unholy magic in the world through all the different religions. And ultimately what he's trying to bring about is this Luciferian religion that we see at the bottom here, which is where he himself will be called God. He will have his androgynous version of himself as the goddess, referred to here as Diana. We'll look a lot more at who she is. And his unholy son, the Antichrist, the false Messiah. So this is just a little picture for you to understand that this is not even coming close to touching on all the religions, by the way, that have these three gods. as their godheads. There are a lot more religions, and I'm just bringing up some obvious ones for you to see. But there are many harlots, and do not be deceived by these religions that say they're all about love and all about the good things, because ultimately they masquerade behind those good deeds, but within their religions there are some deep origins. And also, in pointing this out, I want to say that when people are in deception, and obviously most of us have come out of either Christianity or another form of maybe New Age religion that we thought was good, it's not that we ourselves have come to this depth of understanding, but at the heads of these religions, there is this depth of understanding. And there are people that are going to, as Yeshua promises, pay a very hefty toll for bringing these stumbling blocks into the world and causing so many millions of people around the world to stumble because of it. And so just because you're a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, or a Muslim, or you believe in the Nordic gods, doesn't mean that you are lost. It just means that you've been deceived, and there is still hope for you. There is still an opportunity right up until the judgment takes place. We have a perfect, wise, just judge who will administer his judgment in a way that is way beyond us and above our pay grade. And we can be grateful for him that even though the deception has been so great and has drawn us all in at one stage or other in our lives, he is perfect, and nobody's going to snatch those who belong to him out of his hands. So do not fear, do not worry. There is great hope at the end of all of this. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this star of Remphan and the tabernacle of Moloch. And this is basically the origin religion of Babylon. And to come to an understanding of just how this has spread through the world and how phenomenally cunning this process was to spread this the way it has spread, has taken me almost my entire life to look at. And so there is a lot to this topic, and I would say that this in itself deserves an entire 10 hours of study to really look at it properly. But we're going to unpack it a little bit today to have a little look at what this means. So if we look at Amos 5:26, it says, "But ye have borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Shion, your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves." So this star that's being referred here has a very specific origin. And you're going to see later on that it has been used in many, many religions and also many secret cults as well. "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." So because of what you did with these gods, Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, you've created great anger in the heart of God. And this is a understanding that where this came from, it was to be not only rejected, but it was to be completely destroyed, utterly annihilated. It should never have continued on. But the people that entered the promised land, they wanted other things, and they started to follow other gods. And this one specifically has had a very big impact on the world and still does to this very day. And in Psalm 106:34-43, we read, "They did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them, but were mingled among the heathen, and learned their works, and they served their idols, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went a whoring with their own inventions. So here we see the tragedy of what happened with the Israelites when they chose to worship other gods. And this God demanded the blood of babies. And it is extremely tragic. And it breaks my heart every time I look at this part of the Mystery Babylon, because of just how dark it was. The origins of Moloch, this golden cow-headed fake god, he demanded a sacrifice that will shock most people who haven't seen this before. The depravity of what he wanted from the people after the crazy orgies that he would encourage them to have. And the children, the babies that were born from these orgies, were then handed back to him at birth, and they were thrown into the furnace. And through this process, they believed that they would be given abundance. And so they saw this as a ritual sacrifice for not just wealth, but also for prosperity, and to improve their entire race. Their entire culture would supposedly prosper from this horrific sacrifice and from this process. And this was very much ingrained into most of the religions in the land that was promised to the Israelites before they arrived. And if you look at the middle of the bull Moloch, you'll see the six-pointed star. The Jewish people refer to this star as the Star of David, but its origins go back long before the Israelites entered the land, and is actually known as the Star of Remphan. This star is, if you look at the shape of it, it's a hexagon, and a lot of you probably have already heard of witches casting hexes on people. A lot of witchcraft understanding and knowledge comes from this origin Babylon religion, and this hexagram specifically, this six-pointed star. And when you look closer at this, you will see Moloch is still worshipped to this very day, and still in the traditional sense. In the middle there, you see a large owl god, also Moloch, the all-seeing. This is why they reference him in this one as an owl. And this is actually a photo taken from the Bohemian Grove. And every American president that has come into his position has partaken at this festival. And many secret cults, many secret religions will come here, and they will still perform horrific ritual sacrifices and do all sorts of horrible incantations and chants, and promise allegiances to this unholy god at this place. On the right there, you will see a statue of Moloch, which was erected in front of the Colosseum in Rome. And you'll be surprised to find out that that statue actually belongs to the Vatican. And within that statue, the center of that statue, you will see the six-pointed star with the all-seeing eye in the center of it. You will see the sun in the hand on each side, representing the sun god. And I will show you more information about that specific version of Moloch shortly. On the left there, you actually see an old interpretation of the bronze Moloch statue. that they would light to extremely hot temperatures, and its hands would actually turn bright red, glowing red, and they would place these beautiful babies into the hands of this bronze statue. And then they would hit these drums that you see at the bottom underneath there very loudly to drown out the cries of the baby as it was dying, being burnt alive in the hands of this disgusting abomination. And then on the bottom right, there is another version of this Moloch with furnaces. And this Moloch is not represented in just one religion, but in many. And I'll show you how that all actually correlates as we continue on. So here I'm going to show a little bit about this star Remphan and all of the different places you'll find it. So if we start top at center there, you'll see the Freemason symbol with the G in it. That actually, the Freemason symbol itself forms the Star of Remphan. And if you look at the star, you will see that it has 6 points, 6 triangles. You look there to the right, and then it also has 6 sides. So it forms this 666. It is a very critical part of the hidden religion that the Freemasons practice at the higher end at this 33rd degree Freemasonry. But it's also hidden in many other religions and in many other cultures. And I've just given you a little cutout there in the bottom right corner. You'll see the Armenians, the Ethiopians, the Romans, the Phoenicians, the Hindus, the Mesopotamians, the Bactrians, the Egyptians, and the Japanese all had this star that was represented within them. And the reason why they all have it, which is quite fascinating, really, when you understand that all their languages must have come from one common origin, is that they took with them the religion, the original Mystery Babylon religion from Babylon at that time, and their languages were dispersed. Now, Satan's very crafty, and so he hides his religions in different ways and through different methods, but ultimately he still wants to be worshipped in this way, and so he carries them on. Now, if you look in the bottom left corner there, the Pope's mitre, and the mitre we're going to get into in a minute, but you'll see that the Star of Remphan is also in the mitre. It's also hidden within the American currency. In the stars there, you can see how it forms the 6-pointed star above the eagle's head. It's also quite openly in the Luciferian religion. They quite openly admit to what that star represents for them. It's the as above, so below symbol, 2 triangles, which we'll get into later. Those 2 triangles also represent something. And all of this understanding of this star, it's only really there to point you in the direction of where this all comes from. Obviously, you can see there, I've also included the Israeli flag because they've also placed that same star within their 2 blue lines that represent the understanding of their land that they believe is theirs. But within their land, there are really 2 religions. There is the real Jewish religion there that is still flourishing and growing, and then there is a synagogue of Satan. And it pains me to say it, but a lot of what we're seeing happening in the world right now is due to that synagogue of Satan. And its origins are very nefarious, and I will show you a little bit as to where they come from as well. And I would suggest to you that they're probably a very big reason as to why that star is on the flag. So here we have an interesting picture of the Vatican from above. Here you see the keyhole. This has actually a very big meaning as well. Within the keyhole on the left, you will see from the top, it just looks like a little dot, but from the side, that actually represents a phalanx, a large stone pillar, which is, when we look at this origin, goes all the way back to Nimrod's male organ. And it has a very sexual connotation within this keyhole. And there is a lot of witchcraft that happens through all of this. This is all rune magic, and also dates all the way back to Mystery Babylon. And as you can see, she likes to hide in plain sight. I mean, the Vatican itself is just full of abominations. In the middle top, you can see the main hall where the Pope sits at the front there. He sits at the entrance of the mouth. You can see the teeth of the serpent in the eyes. Behind him, you can see this giant statue structure with what they claim is Jesus's resurrection. If you look closely, it looks more like a abomination out of the bottomless pit, with many tortured souls or spirits coming out alongside this figure, which I would suggest to you is Apollyon the Destroyer. On the top right, you see a sphere. This sphere, they will tell you, is just a contemporary piece of art. It's actually found in a few places around the world, the Vatican obviously being one of them. And you can see it has a sphere within a sphere. It represents actually the Eye of Ra. And the Eye of Ra has a very important part of their mystery religion that they worship. And we'll go into that topic another day, because that's a very large topic within itself. But I wanted to bring it to your attention that this Eye of Ra is also a very big part, and you will find it through all of these religions, this eye, and what this eye actually represents as Satan. The other interesting thing you see in that photo on the top right corner is, if you look in the back there, in that cove, there is a pine cone. And that pine cone is also not what people think it is. And it's very interesting that they chose to put it there. And I would suggest to you it represents the pineal gland, and also has a lot to do with their mystery religion, and is another topic that requires quite a lot of unpacking. Today we're looking at it at a sort of surface level, because to go into each one of these topics is a study within itself. Now, the bottom right corner is the Baphomet, and there you see him actually in the Roman Catholic Church in the Vatican, and he's represented there with his normal hand signal, as above, so below, with the phalanx symbol in between his legs, rising up with the two serpents wrapped around it, being the Medusa. The head of this Baphomet has horns on it, and that head shape actually represents the five-pointed star, the Baphomet star, also known as the pentagram. And so there's a lot more to Roman Catholicism than what meets the eye, and what they will actually reveal to you. And I'm telling you right now that the majority of Catholics have no idea about any of this. They're completely blind to it. And the only people that would know to the degree that I'm showing you today will be the Pope, the Jesuit order, and some of the higher secret orders like the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta. A lot of these orders at their high ends, high degrees, and obviously the Freemasons, they will know and understand this and claim that this is actually illuminating. Here we see the Dagon fish god of Babylon. And this is the reason I'm going back to Babylon again now, is so you can see where these popes come from, these priests that would actually, in the time of Babylon, actually adorn themselves in fish bodies. If you look at the left top part of the slide there, you'll see these priests walking around with fish bodies on them, with the actual fish head forming the hat. They were the Dagon priests of Babylon, and they worshipped the Dagon, which was a fish god. And that has now been fashioned into the modern day mitre. So you can see it actually represents that fish mouth, and is worn in plain sight once again, where nobody would even consider. When, many years I spent looking at these popes walking around with their lovely mitres on, and had absolutely no idea what it meant. But this is the origin of it. And that fish god also has a lot to unpack for another day. But as I said, we're just going to keep skimming over the top of all of this because there's quite a lot to show you. So looking at the Pope, this Pope specifically, Pope Francis, has really rung pretty much every alarm bell you can possibly imagine as the false prophet. And he has shown himself by his writing the book Laudato Si as to what his intentions actually are. Apart from the fact that we obviously all are well aware that the Catholic Church introduced the heresy of Sunday worship and dismissed the Sabbath completely, effectively trying to claim that they had the authority to annul the fourth commandment. And we can see that in their own writings here. If you look at the top right, it says, "The Saviour himself is the door of the sheepfold. I am the door of the sheep. Into this fold of Jesus Christ no man may enter unless he be led by the sovereign pontiff. And only if they be united to him can men be saved. For the Roman pontiff is the vicar of Christ and his personal representative on earth." So they recognize themselves as the intermediator and give themselves the authority to make huge changes to God's commandments and laws, which they actually have no authority to do. And so if we read on down here on the right, it says, "The Catholic Church claims the Pope has the power to change times, to abrogate laws, and to dispense with all things, even the precepts of Christ. Perhaps the boldest thing, the most revolutionary change the Church ever did, happened in the 1st century. The holy day Sabbath was changed to Sunday, not from any directions noted in the scriptures, but from the Church's sense of its own power. People who think that the scriptures should be the sole authority should logically become Seventh-day Adventists and keep Saturday holy." This is their own writings. And now this Pope Francis is taking it one step further with his writing of Laudato Si. And what's fascinating about this little book, where he wants to bring Sunday law in, and he wants to do this, by the way, for preservation of the environment. He believes that by everybody resting on the Sunday, we're going to give Mother Earth, as he refers to her, a room to grow again. And so Laudato Si, if you look in the center there, I'll just read this out to you, has 6 chapters. This is quite interesting. Its chapters are: what is happening to our common home, the gospel of creation, the human roots of the ecological crisis, the integral ecology, lines of approach and action, the ecological education and spirituality. It then has, on the chapter 6, it has towards a new lifestyle, the educating for the covenant between humanity and the environment. Sounds like a new covenant maybe they're preparing to draw up here with the environment. The ecological conversion, joy and peace, the civic and political love. And then if you look in red there, the sacramental signs and the celebration of rest. This is the 237 Sunday worship by law. So they're about to bring in a Sunday law again in this writing. They intend to do this through a combination of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, which is fascinating that they've actually already agreed to this. And there's a summit happening, surprisingly, on the Feast of Trumpets, guys, that they intend to enact this new covenant. And within it, there will be the Trinity and the relationship between creatures, the Queen of all creation. So they've already started letting us know about their intention of this Luciferian religion that's going to come out of this. And beyond the sun. Okay, so This is interesting. The conclusion is the curriculum for the Pope's Global Education Alliance, and it forms 6 chapters, 6 verses, and 6 lines, which is very, very interesting that they actually even hide their 666 code within the Laudato Si. So this is a little bit of extra stuff to show you with what they do with the Eucharist. If you look at what right in the middle there, the green arrow and the green circle around the hand of Moloch, you'll see that there is a sun on the hand of Moloch. That's the same sun that's being held up by Pope Francis there in the middle. And within that sun is the Eucharist. And what they are actually telling you that you are going to partake of there is the ray of light that enters that flesh, that host, that bread that they say is the bread of life. And I would suggest to you that that is a different bread of life to the bread of life that we're all well aware we partake in on Pesach, which represents Yeshua, our Lord, our Savior, and our Redeemer. And we've been instructed to partake of that, to actually be a part of Him, to be a thud with Him, to be one with Him. They are introducing a false bread of life in this Eucharist, and they do so with the understanding that it is actually from the sun god, known as Helios or Ra or Moloch, and its origins, as we've already looked at, stem from Babylon. So just a little thought before I move to the next slide. If we think about what this Pope is suggesting, what he's already presenting, I think there's sort of a little bit of a hint towards where the mark of the beast is going to come from and what it's going to look like. So now let's look at what they're actually trying to introduce here. This is this Luciferian satanic worship. And I'm going to show it to you in a few forms here. If you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see the Masonry Order of the Eastern Star. It actually has the inverted star, the Baphomet star, set up there ready to go. So you can already see what they're representing. This is their own logo, by the way. This isn't something anyone else made up. It also is represented in their signal that you see there on the right, the Masonic Order signal. And if you look underneath it, you'll see that their ceremony performances, the way that they go about their worship, it actually aligns already with the blatantly, openly worshipped Luciferian religion that's now available for us to see. This Luciferian religion was actually worshipped in secret in basements and in all sorts of dark places in forests and by witches and warlocks. But they have now written an entire Bible. They call it the Satanic Bible. And they worship in the open now. And they actually will bring their Baphomet out in plain sight. And if you look there to the right in the middle, you'll see the Baphomet set up in front of the Washington Capitol building, which is just how blatantly open they are in their worship now. 50 years ago, this would have been an abomination and it would not have been allowed, and it would have been fought off vigorously by the population of America. But today, they are free to come out and to show you who they are and what they believe. And so because we have all of this information, they're willing to share it now quite openly. You can see that the Freemason religion that's been around and the hidden secrets of their religion that they've only revealed to the 33rd degree Freemasons and onwards is very much the same as the Luciferian religion, which is now becoming more and more openly worshipped in the public domain. And so you can see I've put them side by side there for you to see. And you can see the sigil of Lucifer there, which is this very unique kind of, it looks like a Baphomet star, but it sort of breaks away at the bottom there. I want you to remember that sigil, because you're going to see it again shortly. I'm going to show you some other places where that sigil's been hidden. I'm going to show you above the Baphomet there, where the Capitol building is. You'll see a painting of Lucifer. This is what this painting was specifically painted to be. And then you will see the Statue of Liberty. And a lot of people have looked at this and taken points of reference on the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the structure of the forehead. And they've agreed that this is actually the same face on the Statue of Liberty. And there's no surprise that I'm going to refer to her as androgynous, because it is not actually a female. It is, once again, a part male, part female Luciferian statue with the rays of light on her head. And she's holding up the torch. She's the light bringer, the light bearer. And if you look to the right there, I've given you a few little snapshots of where she's existed in the past. And in these carvings, she represents Isis. She represents Semiramis, and she represents the goddess Esther, which is where we understand Easter comes from, the fertility goddess who would have a baby sacrificed to her, and the blood of this baby would be used to paint eggs. This is where the origins of Easter come from. Unfortunately, it's very sad. And this is now what is adorning the entrance into the New York Harbor. And they are quite proud of it. They believe it represents their liberty. But is it liberty, or is it some far greater abomination than just some liberties that they have received? And this was given to them as a gift from France. And we've all seen what the Paris Olympics have shown us. And if you haven't, you're going to see it shortly, because the Paris Olympics have been quite open with what they represent and who they are. If you look slightly further to the right there, you'll see I've given you a few other little symbols there. You'll see the Eye of Ra within the Freemason symbol, showing you it's once again the same religion. You will see on the $1 bill, the American currency that is printed from nothing and lent to the entire world with interest. It also is the currency that backs all of the petrol movements around the world. That's why it's referred to as the petrodollar. And it is controlled by a central banking system of families. And do not be deceived. It is not money that is owned by any federal American government structure. It is actually completely privatized at the highest end. And they print trillions of dollars from nothing, and they lend it to the world with interest. And in their own note, you'll see it says Novo Ordo Seclorum. And this is the New World Order. This is their motto. They intend to bring in a new one world order. And at the top of that pyramid is the all-seeing eye. This is the Eye of Ra. This is also known as the Eye of Lucifer. It is also known as the all-seeing eye. It is actually not all-seeing. It is actually very limited in its scope and has been worshipped by this specific mystery Babylon religion from the beginning of the building of the Tower of Babel. This is where it originates from. And there is quite an interesting story to that one as well, which also requires an entire Bible study on its own, because there's quite a lot attached to the Eye of Ra. So let's move on. So the origin of the founding fathers is also an interesting one. I'm going to read you. This is actually from the Freemason writings, which you will find. I think this is in their one of their Constitution writings. And it says, many Americans celebrate our founding fathers and all they did to help helped create our country. What few of them know is that many of the founding fathers were also Freemasons. Some of the more notable founding fathers to also be Masons are George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, led the Pennsylvania chapter, Paul Revere led the Massachusetts chapter, John Hancock, and Chief Justice John Marshall, who greatly influenced shaping of the Supreme Court. Altogether, it is believed that about 9 of the 56 men, 16%, that signed the Declaration of Independence were Masons, and about 13 of the 39, that's 33%, they like putting that number in, that signed the US Constitutions were also Masons. However, what is not known about the Freemasons and the Founding Fathers is what their political agenda was. Over the years, many scholars have tried to dig up files and letters in order to better understand what the Masons were trying to accomplish when helping found the United States. Little have had any luck, but most find nothing at all. Well, just so has it that there is a little bit that we can find on the Freemasons and what their agenda is. And I would suggest to you that looking at all of their symbol and the stars that they represent in their buildings that they love building all around the world, they are telling you exactly who they are and exactly what they intend to bring in. And on that note, let's have a look at the Albert Pike, the 33rd degree Freemason, who was the head of the Freemasons in 1871. He wrote this book, and it's called Morals and Dogma. And you can find it with 2 different covers. I've put them both there on the bottom right for you to have a look at. If you are ever interested in having a read of it, I would suggest when you do read it, there is a lot of nonsense in that book. I wouldn't be taking any of it to heart, but they are definitely revealing their plans in it. And this specific part of the book I've cropped out so that you can have a little bit of a read into the intentions of the Freemasons and what they wanted to do and what they actually are going to do, what we can actually see them doing right now. And this part is titled World War III. And it's written by Albert Pike, as I said. So this is something that he wrote many, many, many years before any of us were even born. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the Argentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. And I would suggest it's quite a interesting time to be reading this to you, because we are seeing something very similar unfolding, are we not? The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and the political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, and spiritual and economical exhaustion. Now, if you can imagine what that actually represents in the world today, the scale of the disaster that these people want to bring into the world is beyond comprehension. They are saying that every single race, every single religion, all of the people of the world are going to be drawn into a war that is so horrific that it will exhaust us in every single way, to the point where we are ready to surrender. This is what they are ultimately after. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly the nations of the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries. We've seen a lot of the world minority revolutionaries rising up of late. I think the world is starting to really groan under the strain of all of these little revolutionary groups. They will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitudes disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. So there you have it, people. This is straight out of the mouth of the horse, so to speak. These are the Freemasons at the highest level, planning for hundreds of years the demise of humanity through absolute and total chaos that they're going to bring in plain sight of everybody. And unfortunately, because most people aren't willing to hear, they don't have eyes to see or ears to hear, they are going to go along with it. Most people are going to take a side and they're going to fight. And we're going to see an exhaustion of people. They're going to become, as this beast system rises up now and starts to devour the whore, there's going to be a great outcry, and there's going to be a lot of sadness in the world, unfortunately. The way the Revelation tells us it's going to be is very much exactly how it's going to be. But these people specifically have been busy planning it. So this hasn't been something that happened by chance. This isn't something that just sort of manifested itself into being. This is something that these hidden religions, this mystery religion, has been working on since the Tower of Babel was built, and has continued to spread its propaganda and its lies through the world, through lots of different hidden cults, hidden organizations, for thousands of years. And then it says, this manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So they intend to bring in Luciferianism by chaos. So this is this order out of chaos that they love talking about. They love putting it all over their hidden documents and on their currency that they print from nothing. And they've been, as I said, very busy working towards this moment that we get to see now. This isn't something that's going to catch them by surprise. And if you look at all of their trades that they do, there's no surprise that they actually know exactly when to sell shares and when to bet against companies, because they have been for a very long time planning to destroy those companies and those countries. And so they make a lot of money off this as well. They enrich themselves in the process of bringing this chaos into the world. So here we see some American presidents, and once again, in their 33rd degree Freemasonry gowns. As I said, the Freemasons are a very important, very integral part of American hierarchy. And if you want to be an American president, you've probably up there in the top 33rd degree Freemasons. There are many hidden orders. Within them are the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta. The Jesuit order has now infiltrated the Freemasons. This was a scenario that took place in the 1960s when the Illuminati, the agents of the Illuminati, actually started to infiltrate Freemasonry and form what is now called the Cabal. So Freemasons are now very well linked to this other form of Luciferianism, which is much more satanic and extremely evil in its origins. And we'll touch on that a little bit maybe later as well, but I'm not going to go into the great depth of the Illuminati because there's a lot to that too. Here we see the Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones are a very interesting structure that was created obviously in Georgia, in America. And it was created by a man who is a 33rd degree Freemason and has hidden himself in plain sight because he had it built on his own block of land, but didn't take any credit for it. And written on this stone are a whole heap of very interesting little hints towards their intentions. And once again, just the Georgia Guidestones section alone has an entire hour that I could dedicate towards telling you about all of the hidden things and the meanings and the secrets that they hid within the stone. But needless to say, the bullet points of it is that they intend to keep a population of no more than 500 million people. That's what they want. They are not interested in a capitalist or a democratic type of society. They want a society that is very socialist, that they can control the resources for themselves. And so the Georgia Guidestones, in their writings, they had written in many different languages, Sanskrit and Hebrew and Egyptian and Russian and all sorts of other languages, even Babylonian cuneiform, which is ancient. They were showing off their knowledge there, showing off what they perceived to be as wisdom. And they were also showing that their allegiance to the sun by actually putting a special hole in there that allowed them to track the movement of the sun. And they also put another hole in there that points to the North Star, the pole star. So they were showing you another secret that they like to keep to themselves, but hide in plain sight by drilling another hole through the center of the column that points directly at the pole star, which, by the way, never shifts. So it's quite a fascinating thing to look at as well. They also, on this same site, they buried a time capsule. Now, surprise, surprise, right on the outbreak of COVID, when the whole world went into lockdown, this thing got blown up. And instead of there being a thorough police investigation like there normally is when something gets blown up, it was very quickly cleaned up. It was cordoned off, cleaned up. The time capsule was pulled out in the middle of the night when nobody got to see it, and it was all disappeared. There is no longer any reference to the time capsule. People pretend like it didn't even exist, even though we know it was there because they had a plaque for it on the floor. So anyway, as I said, there's a lot more to this, and this is once again pointing at their intentions as to what they're after, what they want. They want a global depopulation of the world, and they want complete control of all the resources. This is a one world government, a one world currency, and a one world religion that, as we know, Revelation tells us, is then given over to the Antichrist. Now, within the structure of Washington, within the actual layout of the city and the layout of the Capitol building, you will see there is both stars, the star Remphan and the Baphomet star, the pentagram and the hexagram, once again hidden in plain sight. So they're telling you, these Freemason leaders who constructed this city, they're telling you who they are, where their origins come from, and what they actually represent. And they did it quite thoroughly in many different locations to just probably make a pretty big point of who they are. At the bottom there, at the Capitol building, you'll see the owl. This is the owl Moloch. This is their all-seeing eye symbol. This is the one that they refer to as the illuminated one because it sees in the dark. It sees where others cannot see. And what they believe they can see and what they believe they know is to do with Lucifer himself, the fallen angels, and the mystery religion that they brought in. In the center there, you see the phalanx symbol, which actually represents, once again, the sexual organ of Nimrod. And conveniently, at Trump's inauguration as president, you can see he's quite boldly had his name written on it in the biggest capital letters he could fit on there. Couldn't put them on any bigger if you tried. And if you were to follow that line back through the Capitol building, you'll notice it actually aligns perfectly with the female genitalia, which is the dome that sits on top of the building of the Capitol building. And this is referred to as sex magic. These are the ritual structures that they put everywhere, wherever they hide their religion in plain sight. And so you will see These same pillars in Australia, you'll see them in Canberra, you'll see them in Switzerland, you'll see them in Germany, you'll see them everywhere, because this hidden religion is actually pretty much everywhere. Moving on to Trump and what Trump did in office last time, because I've had a few people try to tell me Trump's a good guy and he's going to fix all these problems we're seeing. I assure you, brothers and sisters, he is not a good guy, and I would never put my hope in a government of this earth. And I would definitely not be putting my hope in Trump. So if you are considering casting your vote for Trump, or putting some financial support into his lobby, or whatever it is that you thought you might be able to do to, quote unquote, make America great again, you may find you are supporting the wrong horse. In fact, there is no right horse when it comes to American politics. They are two wings of this same bird, and that bird I will show you shortly as well. Here you see on the left side, you see Kushner. This is Trump's son-in-law, married to Ivanka Trump, and standing in front of three flags. The flags there are quite telling within themselves. You can see both the stars we've been talking about all night. The Star of Remphan on one side, the Baphomet star on the other. And within the American flag are many, many little Baphomet stars. Are there not? So it's fascinating, really. It's all just sitting here in plain sight for us to see. On the right side, we get to see a very interesting thing that took place in America's history with Trump as president, and that is when he signed the Abrahamic Accords. This was a covenant for peace with the Middle East, and as we know, that peace treaty hasn't been going so well for them. And here you can see him with the Iranian foreign minister. You can see him with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's back in again. Surprise, surprise. And you can see him with the foreign minister for the UAE, the Union of Arab Emirates, or the United Arab Emirates. These Abrahamic Accords may come into play very soon again, as there may be some form of peace treaty arrangement brought up once the chaos in the Middle East simmers down a little bit again. And maybe if Trump is the president at that time, I would not be surprised to see him strengthen that covenant. Who is this Kushner and Trump with their 666 towers? Fascinating. If you look at Kushner, Jared Kushner, he has a building which is actually the 666, and he's quite proud of it. There's no hiding it anyway, so he's quite openly showing you that he has this building. That's on, I think, 5th Avenue. In the middle there, you get to see Trump's tower with the inverted triangle, the as below symbol from the mystery Luciferian religion. So this represents the inverted part of the two-sided triangle that represents the six-pointed star. And within that star, once again, we can see the 6 sides on the building there where the bushes are. He's strategically placed these bushes there, and you can see there are 6 bushes. This is the feminine side of the tower, and then the masculine side of the tower are the 7 pillars. And if you look at the top of the tower, you should be able to see the 7 points. These represent the 7 pillars of Baal. This is the masculine side of the tower. So this is actually sex magic within the tower. This is not just a tower. It would be considered a satanic temple. And Trump's put his accommodation on the top floor, and he has hidden his, which is quite fascinating actually, because the building actually only has, I think, 56 levels, but he's hidden his 2 levels 10 stories higher. So they actually are classified as level 66 and 65. And so he's on the 66th floor of the Trump Temple Tower. And on the ceiling of that penthouse is a very large mural of Apollyon the Destroyer. And there is a lot of other stuff that you can see inside his penthouse that has to do with fallen angels, with the Greek gods, as they like to call themselves. So very fascinating that we see these things in this potential president to be. So moving on, we've got Big Pharma and the Great Deception. In Revelation 18:23, we see it says, "And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries," which the word there is harmakia, "were all nations deceived." And so sorcery, witchcraft with chemistry and medicine is a very, very effective way to deceive the world. And I would suggest to you that in the past few years, we've seen a lot of that deception play out, but it hasn't come to an end yet. There's going to be more. This deception is going to be ongoing. And if you look at the sigil that they use there with the World Health Organization, you will see the staff with the Medusa, with the snake. And once again, you can see at the bottom right there, I'm showing it to you with the Baphomet, with that Medusa that he has in his lap. So this is something that has been well and truly practiced for thousands of years. That Baphomet symbol goes all the way back to Babylon. What's fascinating about it also is that the dollar symbol that we see on our keyboards and in most of Western society is also actually a staff with a snake, an S that actually represents a snake. So our money system is also corrupted by the same magic. They print it from nothing, and then they lend it to us with interest, giving them phenomenal amounts of power. Now, the birth of Big Pharma is actually through a man named Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, to be precise. And John D. Rockefeller's origins are really quite interesting. He came from what most people believe was not much. And then through deception, through manipulation, and through cunning, he was able to build a phenomenal amount of wealth, eventually being able to even influence the medicine industry we see today, with a lot of medicines that are not very good for us, but have been used really in a band-aid form to keep people dependent on pharmacia. The bankers. So the next part of that Medusa symbol. So here we have a very unique character. This is a man who actually just recently passed away. His name is Jacob Rothschild. He comes from the Rothschild family, which were from Germany known as the Rothschild. And the Rothschild family, where they originate from, will go back into around Poland and also the Ukraine. And they represent themselves as Jews, but they do not represent themselves as Jewish bloodlines that many people would know about. They represent themselves as the Ashkenazis, and they stem from a place that, from as far back as we can trace, potentially has very little to do with the Jewish bloodlines, if anything, but have very strategically placed themselves in that position. And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth a little further down the presentation, but once again, we'll let you know that there is a lot more to do with this family and with the Ashkenazis that I can tell you about, but it would require many hours. to really show you this fully. And so this is a man who they believe has hundreds of trillions. Here it says $500 trillion to his disposal. This is more than 10 times the American debt level right now. I'm sure the Americans would love to get a little bit of that money from him to alleviate their debt woes, but I can tell you they won't. And this man, when he passed away, has handed all of his authority to his son, who now also has this level of power. Money, obviously, to this degree, comes with a lot of power attached to it as well. They own nearly every central bank in the world. They finance both sides of pretty much every war since the Napoleon War. They are the major contributors to the media, your oil supplies around the world, and all governments. They fund both sides, hence being two wings of the same bird. And there you get to see Mr. Rothschild with the King of England, and beneath that you get to see him sitting on his gold bullion. And he's a very shrewd operator, Mr. Rothschild was very good at getting his agenda. Now, Mr. Rothschild was credited for the establishment of the State of Israel, and he will tell you that in his own words. There's quite a lot of stuff written about the establishment of the State of Israel today, and specifically the Knesset, which you can see here. The Knesset on the roof has a pyramid with a little all-seeing eye carved into it. This is telling you once again who they are and where they're from. They like to put their stamp on everything so that everybody knows, ultimately, when you look at it to the degree that I have, who they are and what they are capable of. And Revelation tells us a little bit about these people. It says, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. So in Revelation, there's a very interesting little bit of prophecy there that points to what we can see today, that there are within Israel, within the boundaries, the borders of Israel, there are people who claim to be Jews who have disguised themselves very well and have established themselves in the positions of power and have actually not just positioned themselves within Israel, but within the entire monetary system, within the medical industry, within governments, within militaries. They've positioned themselves so that they can bring in this system of control, this one world order, this one world government. And they are of the synagogue of Satan. And I will suggest to you that they are also Mystery Babylon. They are the mystery that has been hiding behind all the governments of the world. If you look down on the left, the map there that I've taken a little screenshot of, you can see the road that leads to the Knesset building is actually called the Rothschild Street. So they even were brazen enough to put their own name on the street to let you know that they put that there. And there in the photo, you see the Rothschilds as they're planning out the building of the Knesset there. So that's actually at the entrance of the Supreme Court. The Rothschilds with Shimon Peres, Isaac Rabin, and the designers of the Knesset. So no surprises where these people come from. And I can tell you right now, there is absolutely no surprise where they will be going as well, because there is only one place for people who do such dark deeds. Here you can see the origins of their control over almost all the media, all the oil companies, all of the food manufacturers, insurance companies. They have their hands in absolutely everything. It's estimated they have probably close to 80% of all the world's assets in their control, and they control those through these 5 main clearinghouses that you can see in the middle. And then if you look in the center of that, there's a question mark. That's as far as they're willing to show you. They're very strategic at blocking off the rest, where these families of this vast amount of wealth, this is what you will find within that circle. This is the names of those families that own all of this. And there's quite a lot to look at there. I'd suggest anyone that wants to look at this slide, contact me privately and I will send you through the slide as a slideshow for yourselves to take your time and really unpack all of this for yourselves. Don't just take what I'm telling you. If you really want to look at this properly, do your own research and look at it deeper yourselves. There is, within the wealth system that was established by these people, there are a lot of trails that they've left for people that they can follow. So once again, I'm only showing you this from a very surface level, just on their asset system and how they operate everything. That in itself would be tens of hours of presentation. So when we saw the pandemic and everything went into lockdown and all these large corporations like Bunnings and shopping centres were all able to remain open, but all the small businesses were forced to shut, you can see why there's no surprise, because they control it all. And the media all sing to the same tune because they're all owned by the same people. And so when they push their agenda, they can push it at that same level. That's why we see everything seems to be very much in sync, very uniformed when it comes to their agenda. So when we see these large movements and uniformed decisions being made around the world, it's pretty easy to see why. So this is a structure, a pyramid that was sort of drawn up to show you a little bit of an understanding as to where the people of the world sit. And you can see they have pushed them right at the bottom of their pyramid. They are the slave order, the people that work all their lives and pay lots of taxes and take all of their medications and listen to the media and follow along happily in whichever religion they've chosen to assign themselves to. Above that population line, you'll see the religions and the governments of the world. You'll see the schooling system. This is all still very much under their control. Most of these people, I would say, that are at this level are still in deception. I would not believe that the majority of the people at this level really know what's going on. Some of them might have a bit of an inkling, but majority of them are still very much deceived. Above that level are the corporations. These are the corporations that are all owned by them. Within that, you can see I've put a few obvious ones there, like Pfizer and Shell and BP and IBM. Okay, so we kind of start to see at this level there is some serious manipulation going on. People are being asked to do things that's not good for their health. And there is, we're already starting to see the form of legal social enforcement. And above that are the world financial systems. So this is where they get their monetary control. So we have the central banks, the world banks, the tax revenues, the interest revenues, and the Bank of International Settlements. So this is how they control the money system. Above that, we have these very powerful organizations that effectively establish themselves above the law. They will have within themselves, within their legal systems, immunity from prosecution. They will have established themselves at the highest end of the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, all the big think tanks, the Bilderberger Group, the Club of Rome, they basically are the ones who are trying to push a one world government structure and feeding a lot of the information down to the larger corporations to act upon. So when you see a lot of uniformed things, like all of a sudden everybody's all the large shopping centers are selling transgender clothing, or all of a sudden there's a massive spike in the price of some goods that doesn't seem to add up, or there's an enforcement of some new type of vaccine. This is the level at which these decisions are being made. Above that is a committee of 300. These are the richest families on earth. This is that circle I was showing you in the previous slide where there's a question mark. Those families are constantly changing over. There's a battle at that top level for control of the world. And the top 13 of those families effectively are repositioned every probably 10, 15 years. There's a lot of secrecy up there at that level, so there's a bit of guesswork attached to that. But above that is the world monarch. And the world monarch is something I'm going to show you a little bit more of on the next slide. Here you can actually see their symbol of the bird with the two wings and the two heads, but the one all-seeing eye. I'd suggest to you, not only is that their symbol for what they represent, but how they operate governments around the world. They give you two main parties. They give you the left wing and the right wing to choose from. And really, at the end, it doesn't matter. It's the same bird. It's going in the same place. And it is just there to give you the illusion of choice. So if you're still a staunch Democrat or Republican or a liberal or a Labour supporter, whatever it is that you think you support in government, I would suggest think again. You aren't going to be making any difference by casting a vote, and you will ultimately see the agenda pushed whether you vote left or right or down the middle. Above that is the Eye of Ra. That is the final stage of control. And I would suggest that that is where we see Mystery Babylon herself. This is the mystery religion that originated from Babylon. This is Lucifer. This is the whole fallen, demonic, satanic, angelic order that is now where Paul would refer to where our battle is. This is where we are really focused in prayer and focused in our fellowship as we grow. Our fight is not with flesh and blood, but it is with the principality of the air. And this is where he is. He sits on top of all of this. He represents himself as the king of the world. He told Yeshua that quite clearly when he took him to the highest place. He sits above all of this, and he claims that he is going to be as God. And I would suggest to you, if you look at this structure, it's actually quite an ordered structure. Within it, obviously, there is a lot of chaos, but the structure itself is quite ordered. This would be an inversion of God's order that he's going to bring to the earth when New Jerusalem arrives. And Yeshua will be at the head of that order, and then followed by the saints, and so on and so forth. So quite fascinating that we get to see a, I suppose, inverted picture of a much more beautiful thing to come. But this at the moment, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, is the abomination that we are faced with. The agenda that we're starting to see roll out now through the United Nations, through the World Health Organization, through their Sustainable Development Goals, the World Economic Forum, is starting to reveal the fruit of what they are aiming for. If you look to the bottom left, you can see within the World Economic Forum, there are a whole heap of presidents and leaders. You've got Macron, you've got Zelensky, you've got the van der Leyen, the the head of the European Union. They're all a part of the World Economic Forum. They're all working for the same agenda. They've been working at it for a long time. These aren't the first people that have been part of it. They won't be the last. On the right side there, with this rainbow crown over his head, is the king. King Charles has a very unique crown. If you look at it closely, you'll see it has 3 rows of 6 lines. The colored lines that you see above actually represent the feathers of his ring, which is the Dark Prince ring. It's a sigil. He carries it on his left pinky. He's had it placed there probably deliberately by the same people, the same mystery people who've been hiding in the shadows have put this there in plain sight for you to see. And I would suggest that maybe he's trying to tell you something about who he is and what he intends to bring into the world with him, with this agenda of sustainable development, which sounds good in principle, cleaner rivers and oceans and safer communities and 15-minute cities where you don't have to drive anywhere. But hidden within that is a social construct agenda that is all about control. It's all about enslaving the population of the world. It's about depopulation. It's about enforcing a one world religion. And it is also about enforcing a one world currency, which will be completely controlled by them. And I would suggest to you that King Charles has been very busy leading the charge with this. This Sustainable Development Goals is his agenda. It was developed by him, and it's been developed by him over 50 years. It's not something he's been working on just for a short period of time. And if you look behind the World Economic Forum, you will find he has put most of the effort into setting that up as well. And a lot of the funding that the United Nations has received has come through his organizations, his charitable organizations that he has established. So he has been a very, very big driving factor in what we are seeing unfold now. And I can tell you he was very delighted when the global pandemic hit. And he was very quick to tell everybody that this would be a reset, a great reset, as he liked to call it. Have a bit of a closer look at King Charles's signal ring there on his left hand, on his left pinky. If you look very close at it on the top left there, you will see the same crown that was over his head there at the World Economic Forum is also these 3 feathers. Something that stands out quite clearly when you see it on the shield is that it represents this Vav, 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 which also represents WWW or 666, which is also quite fascinating. In the middle there, you see a statue that was made for him by a Brazilian artist. This was presented to him at one of his meetings with the Brazilian Prime Minister, and it is referred to, it is titled the King of the World. On the right side, you can see the terracotta and astracarta seals. These are the seals that were prepared for him when he became the king. Terracotta and astracarta are Latin. They basically mean king of the world and king of the universe. And this is quite telling, obviously, in itself, of who he thinks he is. And then if you look there underneath the statue, you'll see the Green Man. And this was actually presented on his inauguration invitation. And it represents this green god, which we got to see a little more of in the Olympics this year when he was revealed in a large golden platter in front of a whole heap of trans dancers representing themselves as some sort of disgusting abomination, Last Supper. So he's telling you quite a lot within that there as well. There is a lot more to, obviously, King Charles than meets the eye. King Charles has been caught kissing a boy. In the top left there, you can see that this was while he was married, obviously. This is something he did in his younger years. He's quite old when he was doing these things. He's very close friends with a convicted, well, now dead pedophile, who was very busy actually doing all sorts of disgusting things in the background for the monarchy, and was given knighthood by the Queen. So we can see there that he surrounds himself with very dubious characters, and his brother, Prince Andrew, has obviously also now been ousted as being one of those who spent a lot of time with young girls on an island belonging to another predator, who then hung himself. So, and then we can also talk about what happened to King Charles's wife, Princess Di, who, in her own writings and recordings, she said she feared for her life because she believed he was going to try to kill her, and that it would most likely happen through a planned accident. So, very interesting stuff there. We could go into a lot more of this, but we'll keep moving. This is his heraldic achievement. Within it, there are quite a few interesting things to see. Once again, the bottom left, you can see that Crown Prince of Wales signet with the Tav, Tav, Tav. The left side is this mouth of a lion, body of a leopard, feet of a bear creature, and has the 3 ribs in its mouth. On the right side is the unicorn, or the little horn, with the eyes of a man. Its feet are actually chained. If you look on the foot there, it's got a chain that wraps around, and it's chained to the red dragon, which is known as the Dragon of Wales, which we can also confidently say is Satan. Within the middle, you will find there are a number of lions, and if you look at this all very closely, there is a lot of interesting stuff there that is being presented to you that I would say would potentially point to him being prepared maybe as the Antichrist. I'm not going to say that he is the Antichrist because he hasn't been revealed yet to the public, but there would be enough there to say that maybe they are trying to prepare him to be this Antichrist. He does definitely have a lot of control and power and a position of authority that would give him an opportunity to rise to that place. But there is more to the Antichrist than just the man. There is a requirement for more than that. And so we will not go into all of that just yet. There's, once again, a lot on that topic that I could talk about, but we'll leave it for another day. So, having looked at all of those things that I've shown you, which point to all sorts of interesting and nefarious decisions being made in high places, one of the things that Revelations points out that I would like to look at a little closer is 18:17 to 20. For in 1 hour, so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and all sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off. This is quite a large number of people, I would believe. This is pretty much all the merchants of the earth that we would know today. And if you think about how many merchants there are on the earth, all of that coming and standing afar would be a very, very tragic day. It means that all trade would grind to a halt. And they cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, the great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. And then we hear in heaven, rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. So, just to put a bit of logic into this, a lot of people like to say it's Rome. Rome is the city. that is going to be destroyed in 1 hour. Well, if Rome was destroyed in 1 hour, where would we find her in the um, order of trade? As far as all of the money of the world is going, I would say she doesn't even hit the top 10. And you would probably find that she's probably not that big in the buying anymore these days, probably makes more money from the selling. But if you look at where all the goods of the world are going at the moment, most of the trades take place, you will find they are going to the United States. America is responsible for close to 50% of all global trade. And the majority of costly goods are going in and out of her cities. And then if you look closely there between the two top trading companies, the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, there is very little difference. They're both about the same sort of trade strength. Both of them found in New York, where you would find this Statue of Liberty, this Esther, Semiramis, if you want to take her all the way back to the beginning of who she was, the light bringer, Lucifer, this unholy God Trinity. So potentially, if we were to see a destruction of Mystery Babylon in our time, I would say right now, based on all the trade in the world, pretty interesting place to look would be where all the money is going and where all the goods of the world are going. And you will find most of it is going in and out of America and mainly in and out of New York. So I would not have great hope for her, for that city, if this would be the time that we would see the destruction of Mystery Babylon. But I would also suggest that she sits on many waters. And so if we were to say that it is more than one city, then I would suggest to you that we would look at lots of Western cities that are all partaking of that same cup, that have all mingled themselves with this mystery religion. And you will find her in all Western cities today. That includes cities in Australia. And if that is the case, and the beast decides to devour the whore, I would suggest do not be surprised to see that it is a much greater destruction than just one city. And there is a reason why we are to come out of her. So if we are spread to the four corners of the earth, as the Bible tells us we are, and we are to come out of her, then maybe we are in her here in this country also, and maybe we are in her in every other country also. So I would suggest maybe realizing that she is everywhere and she is in every religion. But there is a definitely large coalescing of her disgusting behavior within America herself. And if we start looking now, if we were talking about the sort of things that are in her cup, the blood of the saints, and I would suggest to you that there are a lot of beautiful little children that have been smuggled all around the world. There's a child sex trafficking ring now that is unlike anything anybody could have ever imagined. It has broken my heart to look at it. It continues to break my heart every time I speak about it. And those children are being stolen from other countries. They're being trafficked around the world. It is a huge, huge profitable industry. And they are being murdered and they're being horrifically tortured. And it is all in the name of this mystery religion. This happens. And I would suggest that that would be a very large part of the blood of the saints, these beautiful, innocent children that did not deserve this. And because of that, it does say that heaven rejoices when this mystery Babylonian whore is brought to an end. Because I can tell you right now that even thinking of one child being treated in this way is breaking enough, let alone hundreds of thousands every single year. So it is definitely a moment where, when this comes to an end, there will be rejoicing in heaven. And for us, and for all those out there who might hear this recording, I would say, pray, ask God to use you as a vessel. And if you see or hear or know of something going on in the world that you can intervene and help with these children, then definitely do your best to help, because this is not something that God would in any way ever wish for any human, and especially not all these beautiful little ones. But I have great hope that this is all coming to an end soon. This is not going to be allowed to continue for much longer. This abomination is coming to its crescendo. This is the London 2012 Olympics, and here we see some of her revealing herself. On the left there, you see this wizard with a wand. They claim it's the Harry Potter figure, but it doesn't look like that really that much. In the middle, you see the rising phoenix with, once again, the sigil that belongs to the Freemasons. That the wings of the bird represent the inverted triangle, and above it, you can see another triangle representing the other side of that six-pointed star. So they like to show it in their major events because there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people watching this. And on the right there, we see a very weird display with babies and lots of nursing beds. So they were, I think they're telling you something there, and I'll let you decide what you think that is. This is the Birmingham Games. This was the Commonwealth Games in England. This was actually opened by King Charles. And here they brought in the big red beast, the bull, with his abominations written on his face. And he was then mounted by the woman who was dressed in scarlet. And he was then worshipped by the people in the ceremony. And in the middle there, you see behind him is the Tower of Babel. And within that tower are digital screens where they displayed a serpent rising up from the center of it. That culminated in a sphere or an eye of Ra above it. On the right side, you can see they timed this shot so that the woman was illuminated, who was sitting on top of the bull. This was a huge open display of Baal worship, of Moloch worship. So they are very brazenly coming out now and showing you who they are, where they are, the authority that they have, and the ability that they have to do this in plain sight. I'm sure if Moses stood here and saw this happening, he would have thrown those 10 commandments back to the ground with great rage because of what he has seen here. This is an absolute abomination. And welcome to the 2024 Olympics. Now they're bringing all of the final pieces together in this blasphemous act. On the left here, you can see this unholy Last Supper with the lesbians and transvestites and people with things hanging out of their pants I don't even want to talk about. In front of them there, they have this Greek god, this god of excess, this god of lust. They bring him out on a plate, and they reveal that as this is Paris, this is who we are. This is what the President Macron said was their understanding of Paris. And they were very much shunned for it by the world. And then they tried to backpedal and say it wasn't the Last Supper. But the irony was they'd already printed it out in their own website. and they called it. It was a play on words to do with the sign, the river. With that in French, it actually means also supper. So it was the supper of the supper on the supper, is the way it was written on their own website. And then they wanted to turn around and say, no, it's actually it's from a different painting. But that was only to mitigate the damage that they had caused with that scene. In the top center, you see the rider of a horse, and on his back is a flag with, I would suggest, maybe a rainbow, a bow. They're the rings of the Olympics in the colors of a rainbow. And he is riding out. And what is he riding out to do? And there he is again on the horse at the bottom. This one is actually a real human riding a horse, with the angel wings in the background. You can see there's a lot of this spiritual being represented in this white horse rider. And then in the closing ceremony, if you look on the top right, there is this freakish looking creature. I would suggest to you, is Lucifer. This is the light bearer. This is the one who they intend to bring in. This is what they're showing you. This is the ritualistic magic that they're showing to everybody in plain sight, but they then cover it up by telling you a different story. But this was all actually just finished, and this final closing ceremony just happened. So I've just put this together today because it's all just been brought to my attention really over the last few days. Gog and Magog, they parade them through the streets in England. They have been for hundreds of years, maybe going all the way back to the kings of England in the 1st century even. And so they've been preparing for a Gog and Magog, these two giants. You look at them compared to human size, they are massive giants. I would suggest to you that they are of Nephilim origin once again, these abominations. And here it says in this little blurb that was straight out of their book, according to the Lord Mayor, the giants Gog and Magog are traditional guardians of the City of London, and images of them have been carried in the Lord Mayor's shows since days of King Henry V. The Lord Mayor's procession takes place each year on the 2nd Saturday of November. So this is something they've done ritualistically since King Henry V. And they know they represent giants, and they call them Gog and Magog. You don't have to put too much more together to understand what they're saying. So, the land of Tarshish. This is in Isaiah 23, 7-14. Is this your city of revelry, the old, old city, whose feet have taken her to settle in far-off lands? Who planned this against Tyre, the bestower of crowns, whose merchants are princes, whose traders are renowned in the earth? Well, I can tell you right now, there is definitely a city where kings are crowned and where traders are very, very rich. The Lord Almighty planned it to bring down her pride in all her splendor and to humble all who are renowned on the earth. Till your land as they do along the Nile, daughter Tarshish, for you no longer have a harbor. The Lord has stretched out his hand over the sea and made its kingdom tremble. He has given an order concerning Phoenicia, that her fortresses be destroyed. He said, no more of your reveling, virgin daughter Sidon, now crushed. Up, cross over the Cyprus. Even there you will find no rest. Look at the land of the Babylonians, this people that is now of no account. The Assyrians have made it a place for desert creatures. They raised up their siege towers, they stripped its fortresses bare and turned it into a ruin. Wail, you ships of Tarshish, your fortresses is destroyed. So just looking at a map of this area of Tarshish, Gomer, Magog, Gog, Meshech, Rosh, Tubal, Persia, the area of Togarmah, which is now really the area that could be called Turkey, Syria, the area that may also be known as Assyria. This was the original land of Assyria. Here in this area, we can see there is potentially a lot of things that are going to be happening in Revelation, because the movement of peoples from around the world in preparation for battle against Israel is already starting to boil. We're seeing tensions between Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan. We're seeing tensions between Israel and Russia. We're seeing tensions even between Israel and the Ukraine. We're seeing governments from around the world now have actually declared that the Israeli president and the Minister for Defense are criminals and that they should be arrested. So the whole world is starting to rise up against Israel. And here it says, Son of man, set the face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief of prince of Meshech and Tubal, and thou shalt come up against my people of Israel, as a cloud to cover over the land. It shall be in the later days, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. So that's a very powerful prophecy of what's coming. And just presenting you a few maps with what people have done over the years, looking at these locations, what they actually mean, where they are. And I think for the very first time, we can say the land of Israel is really hated by almost all the nations of the world. We can see that they are being isolated by Europe. America may be one of their only allies left. And if America is torn apart by internal war, maybe, or maybe a combination of internal and external attacks, they could very quickly find themselves all alone and surrounded by many nations that hate them. So a fascinating time to be on the earth, a fascinating time to look at these things, fascinating time to consider maybe who we are going to have to be when we are called to be a witness to a world that is stooped in violence, where religions hate each other, where people from different languages and tongues hate each other, where chaos and confusion is reigning. Could it be that God is preparing for himself a people to witness, to bring hope, to bring joy, to show truth where the truth has been taken away, where potentially the word of God is no longer easily found? And if so, if we are coming into this relationship in fellowship for that purpose, then it's probably a good idea that we are aware of just how much deception there is in the world, and just how easy it is to deceive the nations of the world, because they already have everything they need in place. They don't require much more. And ultimately, what they now want is a top-down, one world government with a one world currency, with all of the levers and mechanisms in place. And this is in all preparation for the Antichrist. They will hand this all over to him, and they will do it with great joy. The area that is known as Ukraine, there's a sigil I showed you earlier, which is the Luciferian symbol. If you look in the Ukrainian flag, you'll see they have this trident, this three-pointed prong. There's actually, when you look at it closely, you'll see is the sigil of Moloch. It is that inverted pentagram. You can see the Baphomet star in it, in the middle there, which kind of shows you how that links together. And it's quite fascinating that it is actually carried by the Ukrainian people as their flag, as a sign of allegiance. And within their military elite, the signet that they wear is the black sun, which also has quite an interesting origin history story to it as well. That area that is now Ukraine was known as Khazaria, or Khazaria, and it is where this group of people originate from. They were driven out of that region by the King Philip of Russia over 1,000 years ago because of what they were doing. They were worshipping Moloch, and they were sacrificing babies into this flaming calf, this bronze bull. And they then strategically spread out around the world, taking advantage of being able to hide as a Jewish race, which they refer to themselves as the Ashkenazi. And they were very, very good at pillaging people, very cunning, very deceitful, very good at pretending to be someone they weren't. They were in Khazaria, in this area where they established themselves. They were known as the name stealers because they would actually steal the names of traders as they were traveling through from Europe to Asia or Asia to Europe. They would offer them a bed in a nice inn. They'd get them drunk, and they would find out all the information about what they were doing, and then they would kill them. That person would disappear, obviously, and they would send out a person with the same name, with all the paperwork that they had on them, and go and complete the trade. But it would be a one-way trade. They would take the gold or the goods or whatever it was and bring it back into this land, Khazaria. And that's how they made themselves rich. And they made themselves very, very rich. And eventually they had so much wealth that when King Philip went to annihilate them, they fled with all that wealth and established the banking systems throughout Germany, throughout France, throughout Spain. Those families we now know are the Rothschilds, and they have other families in amongst them as well, but they're the ones that obviously stand out the most because they've been the most active. They're actually very heavily involved still to this very day in the banking system that we now know. And just to finish off a little bit, to get a picture of what's going on right now in the world, this is very new once again. We're only seeing the establishment of this BRICS union, and it's only happened over the last few years. But they've established themselves against the monetary system that has dominated the world for the last 100 years. And I would suggest to you that they are starting to rise up against her, and they are starting to become maybe even more powerful than her. Their populations, if you look at the overall population of the BRICS nations, they outnumber the NATO or the European Union or United Nations, whatever you want to call them. They are stronger in their GDP by about 10%. Their currency that they're bringing together, they're already telling us is going to be a new digital currency, a one world currency. It's going to be some form of BRICS digital currency to start with. And they do not like being told what to do anymore. They were all trading with the same petrodollar, doing the same things that the rest of the world were doing up until about 2.5 years ago, when Russia started its war with Ukraine, and then they very quickly formed together against the rest of this European and American force. And they have been quite active now also throughout Africa. A lot more nations are joining, and they seem to be tipping the balance of power for the very first time. And we're going to see as this group of people, which also includes Iran, start to really fight back, just how much damage they can actually do when they have a lot of control over the oil and a lot of the finite resources of the world. So it's definitely a time to be watchful, to have your eyes open, and to realize that we're in a time where we may potentially get to see some very beautiful things as well. Because at the end of all of this, we know there's a beautiful promise, and that is what I'm rejoicing in. It says, when you see nation rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and we're seeing all of that. And we're seeing earthquakes in diverse places and pestilences and plagues. We're seeing it all. When we see those things, we need to lift our heads and rejoice, because we know the kingdom of heaven is near. And that's what I would suggest we all do, and especially in this fellowship, because I know we're all very eagerly awaiting the return of Yeshua.